Shake hands.
Should we do that?
Get out of my house
Right.
now.
I don't know why I keep it on camera. I don't know why people out there will have an attitude of, oh, I don't mind taking from the corporation.
Yeah, sure.
But if they knew that Darren Latham sculpted it, would they steal from Darren?
It's the problem with dehumanizing corporations, isn't it? There are real people involved and they're really talented and skilled and you just don't know their names.
No.
Which is a shame. I usually paint silly little miniatures. What we're going to do in this video, I think, is share that illumination with you, the 3D printing novice.
Hi there, I'm Ross, and you're watching Midwinter Minis. Right then, so you're not a complete beginner, you know a few things, but...
I would say I'm very much a novice. I've 3D printed in the past, and it failed miserably, and I got rid of my 3D printer.
Right.
I printed one successful thing that I managed to use in a video, tried to print some things, gave up, because it became a hobby in and of itself, and I didn't have time for that, so I bailed on it.
But today, we've gone through some other things today. We've set him up. We've got him a GK2. You can learn about his experience with that on his channel, Fohammer Videos. No, anyway, you'll figure it out. There'll be links down in the description. But anyway, so you've reached out to your community of patrons?
Yeah, because obviously I have my experience and I have my bias based on what I've already done. I asked my Patreon supporters if they had any specific questions about 3D printing, whether it's getting into it or kind of problems they've been facing if they are just kind of at the beginner stages of doing it. And I have a list of them here that are the pretty good ones and asked by multiple people. I mean, all of them are covered. I haven't ignored anyone. Should we just go through them?
Yeah, no problem. So obviously this will be useful not only to these people, but anybody else, I'm guessing, who is a novice, is considering getting into 3D printing. I think you've obviously got your list of questions there, but this should pretty much run through the majority of the journey of what people are thinking and the questions they're asking before they even get started. So I've had a quick browse over some of them, but some of them I've not been allowed to see.
No, I want your instant guttural, visceral reaction to them.
Okay. I've got a video for that.
Oh, first question is pretty generic and will act as a good primer for you if you're watching this video for some reason and are like, what the hell are you guys talking about? We're talking about 3D printing. The Free Willbat and Jamil Damani ask, how does it work in general? And I have absolutely no idea how 3D printing works. So just give us a basic overview of what 3D printing is and how it works, if you please.
Not a problem. I'm going to try and do this without sounding very nerdy. So basically, there are two types of 3D printing. There's resin printing and plastic printing, but what we're focusing on for miniatures is resin printing. So ignore all that plastic where you've got like a thing that goes around and builds stuff out of melted plastic. We're talking about resin. The basic way it works is you pour resin into a vat, UV light shines up through the vat and cures it. And it goes through an LCD that renders shapes, and it goes through those shapes, and then it cures that as a layer. Then it lifts, goes back down, cures another layer. I did a video the other day actually that kind of explained it, or I tried to explain it. So the idea is so you can sort of visualize it. It's like, imagine getting a banana and then slicing it evenly in very tight slices.
Do you know what it looks like? I'm going to cut you off because I'm rude. Do you know what it looks like? It looks like an MRI scan. You know when they do that and you can like look at it layer by layer because it's divided into
I suppose it is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good example. Weirdly, like I believe they work in voxels as well, which is a thing that 3D printers were based on what I was reading the other day. But yeah. But no, the simple visualization, because I think this will be a good way to reference it. Slice a vegetable into tiny slices and you'll be there as slices. Yes. Hold it all back together, it's still the shape of the original object.
Beautiful.
That's how a 3D printer generally works.
I'm going to give that answer an 8 out of 10. That's pretty good.
I didn't realise I was getting scored.
Yes.
Right, okay. Here we go.
If you'd gone into FDM as well, I would have,
Oh, is that why?
No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. You've missed your chance.
Terrible.
Okay, Riley Cooper, Ed Nerdin, and Survivor's Quest all ask a kind of similar question that I've truncated into this. What are the best slices for FDM versus resin printing? Oof. Also, just to add on to this, they've been getting repeated fails, so they want to know what are the best ways to learn support placement, which kind of goes hand in hand, right? And how best to add supports onto models for easy removal without loss of detail.
Oh, brilliant. That is a little big three-parted question.
Yes.
Right, so who was that? That was Riley,
Ed, and Survivor's Quest.
Yes. So, right, guys, and anybody else who's watching. So slicers, first off, we can break that down. So for resin printing, there's a bit of an argument, what's better, Chitu box or light cheese slicer? answer. Honestly, the answer is both. We have got a special guest here. We've got Nessa, who wants to be on the video so bad, don't you? You do. Come on, say hi. You've been jumping up at me all morning, and she's camera shy.
No, she's just a dick. Hello. Hello, puppy.
Brilliant. Right. All right, we'll go back through it. So there's a couple of approaches. For resin printing, the best slicers at the moment are Lychee and Chitubox. I always say Lychee is better if you want to when you want to support your models. It's just got a better workflow and that sort of thing. However, Chitubox generally has fewer issues when you slice your model, actually do the turning it from 3D into an image file for the printer process, mainly because Chitubox are the guys who make most of the control boards for printers. There are fewer technical issues is the main thing. So those are your choices there. There isn't a better one. I use both. I will support in Lychee, export, and then slicing Chitubox. In FDM printing, the best slicer at the moment is called Orca Slicer, which is a weird one because that is built off the back of the Bamboo Studio Slicer, which is built off the back of the Prusa Slicer, which is built off the back of the Slice 3R application. But yeah, Orca's the one that everyone's loving at the moment because it's like Bamboo Slicer Plus for every printer out there, which is really good. The second part of the question, so support placement is, I mean, that's a whole video in itself. In fact, I've already got a video on that, and that only touches the surface, very basic support placement. Generally, you want supports in areas that aren't in recessed detail, aren't in extremities. You want them on as many flat surfaces as possible, and then you really need to practice and practice and practice and learn from a lot of experts. See, thanks, Nessa.
Big shakes.
But yeah, you really need to practice and practice and practice and learn from other experts who do it in the industry to understand, like, where do you want, is one big support better than many little supports for a specific area and that sort of thing.
It's a learned skill through trial and error, right? It's
Definitely.
not just, you don't just like download a program and press a button and it's done.
No.
There's a lot more to it, unfortunately.
Exactly, yeah. Even
that was a real deep
supports.
question to go in at number 2.
I kind of got a third part.
I kind of phased out a bit there, I'm not going to lie. When you started talking about different slices, I was like, no. We have been using Chitubox though over the weekend. Weekends? It's the middle of the week. We have been using Chitubox.
It's only been a day.
You called it a very different name while I was using it. It sounds like Chitubox.
It does sound like Chitubox, yes. It has a very popular...
It has its issues, which I discovered straight away.
They both do. I'm
going to give that answer a 7 out of 10. Good.
No worries.
Could have been more interesting.
This is real. This is raw. Like, this is the beauty of it,
This is
guys.
unprepared.
There's nothing prepared here. I don't know anything. I'm not reading from a script for once.
No.
So stick to my usual videos. They are much better than this.
Same. Okay, so Frankie Seibert and Felix Thomas ask, where should someone start? And is it really that inexpensive compared to buying models from Games Workshop? And is there a kind of monetary break-even point where you feel like the initial investment in buying and using a 3D printer and the resin and all of the paraphernalia outweighs just buying pre-made models?
That's a big question. So Frankie and Felix, good question there. So the break-even point, it's a bit of a weird thing, and I've talked to this about a few people. When I got into it, like I like miniatures. Everybody knows I like Warhammer, but I don't like playing Warhammer. I like to paint Warhammer. So to me, it doesn't really matter whether or not I can get Warhammer miniatures or other miniatures. I just want fun things to paint.
Yes.
So for me, the approach has always been, I really enjoy things that I can paint. The break-even point has been, I now have a wider world open up to me. But it is in many ways a different hobby. In regard to your approach, like how you can get in, you can get started with a 3D printer. People say for £100. That'll get you a printer, but then as you've seen, like before I even arrived, I said, right, get one of these and get one of them and get one of this. And then you've got to buy the models themselves if you want decent quality STLs. I'd say your budget's starting at around £200. If you are looking to replace Warhammer as a hobby, there are options like One Page Rules out there and other war games that are 3D printer specific. They make models for them, and you can actually get a starter kit for One Page Rules for free. Now, they aren't as good as a Warhammer starter kit because they're all identical models, or there are 3 types of identical models in the set. So you don't get the variety, you don't get the sculpture thing, but you can essentially get a 3D printer for £100. You can get the kit that, I mean, what you spent less than £30-40 on that?
Ish.
And then
the extra paraphernalia to stop yourself from ruining your carpets.
Exactly, yeah. Get yourself a nice big floor mat. I don't think we're being smiled at the moment, are we? Spoiler alert. Yeah, get your 3D printer, get yourself a plastic tray or a silicon mat, get yourself a cleaning solution, pickle jar, get yourself a floor mat, optional. Depends how much you love your floors. And resin, the cheapest you can get it for a half decent one, you can get it for like £20. I sell a resin for £50. It's more expensive, but get what's good for you. So £150, you can get started, and then you can get models for free off the back of that. Beyond there, it then has broke even versus what you can get. So there you are.
So really, if you were talking about the potential of buying a box set or a particular model that is in the region of like 200, maybe 250, once you factor in all of the paraphernalia, I would say that's kind of the break-even point just for
250 you're going well beyond, like, genuinely.
But it's not just a monetary investment.
No.
There is a huge amount of time and learning involved. Just in the same way that when you first got into the miniature wargaming hobby, whether it's painting or playing, you don't just start, buy it, and instantly know how to do everything. There's a big old learning curve. So that is a thing to factor in as well. And your time is valuable. It's not just money. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm going to give you an 8 out of 10 for that one. That was pretty good. Well done.
Am I going to get 10 for any of these?
Yes.
Good.
Jub Fud Bump asks... A good resin mix for minis, not too bendy, not too brittle. I've experienced this as well because my first batch of stuff was so incredibly brittle.
Yeah.
As soon as you put any pressure on it, it would just shatter. So, yes.
A really good resin that's not too bendy, not too brittle, is Wargamer by Fohammer, and yes, that's 3D printed. This is our own. It's made specifically for miniatures and to emulate plastics. But no, in all seriousness, there are so many resins out there. There are tons of them. And the general rule of thumb is if you get something that's more bendy, you lose detail.
Yes.
Because it's bending on the plate as you're printing and it's a bit softer. If you get something that's really high detail, it's generally... it just breaks, it's too brittle. So things like Frozen's Mega 8K resin is beautiful resin, but you can, like, for smaller miniatures, you can look at it and it just falls apart. So it's about finding that balance. Some people really like Sorayatek's resins.
Yes.
So Sorayatek do what's called fast resin, very similar to Frozen's resin, but you can pour in like 20% of what they call the tenacious resin and do that. Personally, I don't like mixing. A lot of people don't like the mess anyway, so mixing's crazy. I don't like mixing paint for a colour. I don't. Like, if it's not in a pot, I won't use it. Oh. So, but I've got the same attitude with this. I'm assuming there are more people out there who don't want to mix...
just want to buy a product and use it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's fair.
So
it's been a thing of yours for a while, though, right? Finding that kind of resin that would essentially act like popular miniature companies' plastic.
Exactly.
Acts when it's cured.
Yeah.
And from the minis that we managed to print off in the session we've had together, they do feel like that. Like, there's flex to them. They don't snap, and they feel great.
Yeah, it's something...
Well done.
Thank you. It's something we've put a lot of effort into, and something I'm going to call everyone out here. Like, none of the resin companies understand how to make miniatures resin when they call it... It's called TGM resin. We know. We've got one. Coming to the US soon. Very soon. Right.
Okay, I'm going to give that a 1 out of 10 because it was just a blatant self-promotion.
Wow.
Oh, big slap.
Yeah.
Question 5, maybe? 4, 5. Sam Ahern says, what kind of PPE would you recommend for a safer resin setup? And is resin at all suitable in a domestic setting?
I think we've learned the answer to that, haven't we? This is kind of a spoiler the last couple of days. It's a two-part answer. One, so the PPE you should use is definitely, don't ever get it on your hands, your skin, or anything like that. It's horrible stuff to get on you. I've got it on me before. I've been fine for a couple of days, and then I've just been like scratch, and before I know it, I'm 15 layers deep just from getting a drop on my skin. Wow. It's not nice stuff. You shouldn't take it lightly. As for working with it, I get a silicone mat, make sure everything stays down on there, so at least then I've got a contained area to clean. As for PPE, gloves are a must at all times, and ideally when you're actually opening it and cleaning it, you want a decent respirator mask that's filtered as well with a proper charcoal filter in there. But as for the health concerns, I honestly don't know as much as I should. I don't think anyone does. You look online, you see claims that these can't hurt you at all because the amounts are so minimal to you're all gonna die. Holy shit, we really are gonna die! And the answer is I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I can't do that. Yeah. Any video I do is, look, this is me just...
I think realistically, it's probably going to be somewhere in between, right? It's not totally harmless, but also people have now been doing this for like a home hobby for like 5-6 years.
True.
Quite a lot of people since like the affordable resin 3D printings come, and there hasn't been like a marked increase in loads of like, you know, middle-aged men going into hospital with, you know,
not
like
yet, but I mean, how long
problems.
How long were we smoking before we realised that that was a problem? So I don't want to. What I say to, like, you know, everybody out there, take whatever precautions, take as many precautions as you can and whatever risk you're uncomfortable. Safe for a home environment, again, I wouldn't get it on my skin, so I wouldn't get it anywhere near kids or dogs or anything like that. Most people will put it out in their garages and sheds.
Yes.
I'm lucky because I've set up a ventilation system, so right behind my printer, I am venting everything outside. And then it's the environment's problem. That bit's not going in the video.
I'm going to give that answer a 10 out of 10. Well done, very honest.
That was the answer that is honest, but I don't know.
But more people should just say they don't know things. It's great. More should be researched into that.
100%.
So, next question from Ben Mishik and Sean Green. They both kind of ask a very similar question, which leads on from the question before, which is, I live in a small flat and want to know how stinky/toxic it is, and can I set it off by opening a window, and will I poison my dog?
I think we kind of covered that. If your dog goes licking it, should not happen. How stinky it is, it varies. Like, you can, the resin you've been testing, I would imagine you probably determined it's not as smelly as some of the ones in the back.
The combo of what we've been using today, which is odorless spirits and your resin, there's like tiny smell. It's like less smelly than when I airbrush some paints. Yeah. It's very discreet. However, I do have an air quality monitor and it is going crazy at the moment with the windows closed. Yeah. So I would say, I mean, I know you're supposed to be answering these questions.
No, go. It's good to know your view on it as well.
I would say unless you can invest a ton into like extractors and like having really good air circulation, it's not really appropriate for a small apartment or a small flat. Yeah. Resin printing anyway. FDM maybe is like more...
It depends what you're printing.
Your dog's not going to eat your plastic.
And if they are, how harmful are they? We don't know. But yeah, FDM printing is a bit easier. But I mean, even in saying that, I'm not trying to say you're wrong, but at the same time, you're wrong. There are solutions. So for those people in a flat who desperately want to do this, what a lot of people have done is gotten things like a hydroponics grow tent with a small fan and extractor, and then just chuck the hose out the window, like when you're airbrushing.
How can you? Okay, so follow-up question from me: how can you start 3D printing at home in a small apartment without all of your neighbours and everyone thinking you're growing weed?
Fair point. Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, a lot of people do it in lofts and attics, and obviously you keep that insulated as well.
I'm going to give that answer an 8 out of 10. Well done. Okay, DJ Kuroto asks, how do amateur printers make supports for models that don't already have them?
I've got a video on that. I promise not to answer.
I feel like every single one of these questions you could just say,
I could, yeah. So in all seriousness, auto supports is my approach. I've got a really crazy video. Let me explain it without just going, go and watch my channel. But I have got a video on the basic approach, which when you look at it seems like add auto supports, then delete them all, then add them all manually. But the reason for it is auto supports inform you of the areas. The problem areas, what needs to be heavily supported, what doesn't need so much. And then all you do is you use that as a reference, and then you go back in and go, if you've got an elbow with like a gun or something like that, and the gun has like rivets in the bottom, auto supports will just stick it in the rivets. Yeah. But actually, if you take that off there and just move it to these back corners, it'll still be just as supported, but you're not encroaching in the detail, which is key. So, nice. But again, check out Fohammer videos for more information on that answer.
I was going to give you a 10 for that, but I'm going to give you a 9 for the disgusting self-plug. Okay.
Wait, hang on. You're ducking me a mark because I'm plugging my content on my channel.
Okay. Bartoszewski says, for those who do not have space for permanent setups, best tips for setup or cleaning, storage, and also, I think this is a really important one, disposal of resin cleaning water.
Yeah, it's going to vary. Like in regard to your setup, you're more than likely going to have at least a printer. Then you're going to want a cleaning area, which is as much as a silicon mat or something like that. And then you're going to want an area for washing, which can go on top of your silicon mat if you're using a pickle jar or something like that. So all of that, your pickle jars are self-sealing, so you can leave your cleaning solution in it. That just needs to go somewhere safe out of the reach of kids and pets. Your printer, ideally, what you want to do is most printers come with a bunch of filters, so you can just pour the resin from the vat. It's not the cleanest, but do it on top of your mat. Again, it's not the cleanest. Pour it from your vat back into the bottle of resin, tighten it up, put the printer out of the way, safe for kids and pets. I can't go in specifically into what space you've got. I don't know people's sizes, but you're going to need somewhere to put the large equipment when it's not in use.
Essentially, I've got this set up on a bookcase. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. You've got to dance around a bit moving your cure station, but the cure station's like the most easiest to move part and the most infrequently used part.
Yes.
Because you can print and print and print, and you can clean and clean and clean, but then the final piece is like, oh, I'll just bung it all in here together.
Yeah.
So that's easy enough. But yeah, and the second part of that question was, remind me, it's Bartos says disposal tips. Right, this is a good one. So do not dispose of liquid resin in the trash. Not a lot of people know this, and they go, oh, I want a water washable resin, and then they'll get a water washable resin and they'll rinse it in the sink. Not good. Shouldn't ever go in the sink. What you need to do, any liquid resin, before you dispose of it, needs to be cured. So there's a couple of ways. You can put it in clear bags and stick it out in the sun, either on a balcony, in a window, in your garden, something like that. Again, safe from kids and pets and upper height. Let all the resin cure, then you can pour off the waste and bin the cured resin. Another way to do it is, obviously I said to you, get a pickle jar, get a large pickle jar. You can empty the cleaning liquid from that back into the bottle. You can then use your pickle jar, pour your waste into that, stick it in a curing station if you've got one, and just let it spin. That'll cure off the resin. Same with your gloves. Stick it all in there, cure it all off, make it hard, and bin it that way. But do not put liquid resin down the sink, in the bin, or anything like that. It needs to, all of these things really need to go to proper chemical disposal facilities if you're leaving them in liquid form. That's nerdy as hell, but
it's important though, right?
It is, yeah. Like, let's not kill our planet any more than we already have.
Yes. And also, I don't imagine like water treatment facilities are very, very geared up to filtering out like UV curable resin in the water. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe that's a video. I should nip round to 7 Trends.
Yeah. Anyway, that's purely speculation. I'll give that a 10 out of 10. Well done. Good answer. Original Armed Prophet asks, is there any advice for calibration? A friend tried to get into 3D printing and couldn't get either of his printers to work and gave up in frustration.
That's not uncommon.
That's what happened to me.
That isn't uncommon. It's not easy.
Calibrating this printer was about 6% the difficulty of calibrating the printer I had before.
Yeah?
Yeah. You just had to put the thing on, put the clamp down, and like lower it.
Oh,
with the little pieces of
paper.
The leveling. Yeah, with the little measuring things. These boys.
Yep.
Boop, 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 boop. And then it was done, and it didn't fail.
Yeah.
It took me like 2 days to level the bed on my old one. Because it had like screws in different places, and every single time you tightened one, it would loosen the other, and it was just like, I'm not saying like get a better printer, but I think some printers are more susceptible to having bed leveling issues than others.
God, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they're called Elegoo's. And the reason why I'm doing that is a very inflammatory comment that a lot of people are going to go absolutely mental over, but Elegoo's have still got that ball joint. And yeah, it's like that. When you adjust one, it'll adjust another side. There are ways to do it. So you used to have to put paper down. Now you just lower it, hold it in the vat, put pressure on it and tighten it.
Yeah.
It's easier. But the problem with that is when you print, if you print something that's heavier one side or a bigger model one side of the plate, as that's printing, it's slowly nudging it out of alignment. So every 2 or 3 prints, you're going to have to sort it again. But other than those, we don't have them anymore. But there will definitely be 7 or 8 people who comment below this video and say, I've never had a problem with mine. Great. enjoy being in that club, guys.
I'll give that an 11 out of 10 for the sass.
But no, seriously, I just want to go on from that and say, when you couldn't get it working properly, a lot of it is that's just leveling. There's then the whole configuration. The bigger thing to know about 3D printing is twofold. One is you cannot get somebody else's settings and just use them because it's so dependent on your environment, the temperature. Now, thankfully, you've got the GK2, which regulates temperature. The resin, the layer height, all of these things affect 3D printing. So this is the bit where I'm going to self-plug. I've got a video on my channel, which is the quick steps. I'm going to lose my 11.
You're back to 10.
I am, damn it. But again, it is the quick step. It's the easy way. It's the run this exposure test a few times. This is what you're looking for. That's perfect exposure. Bump it up a bit and print. And if you can't get it stuck to the bed, we'll go into more detail in the future.
I mean, if you are having legit problems, though, do consult the faux hammer video
Definitely.
that he's talking about, and we'll no doubt link in the description because it will actually help you through the process.
Yeah, 100%.
More than two guys just being like, oh, yeah, that's a problem. Okay, good question there. Now one from Tom Finch, who asks, best software for modeling and for printing.
Ooh.
Also, the best budget printers and curing stations.
Oh.
Okay, let's go bit by bit. Best software for modeling. Blender's great, right? Everyone talks about Blender.
Is it Blender? Right, Blender is good. Yes, I've remembered the name of the one that I'm trying to remember earlier. Honestly, got to be straight, I don't do modeling,
right? Yeah.
But I do speak to modelers. And two people I've spoke to who are very well known in the industry, and I believe your audience would know them well, have recommended ZBrush, which I've never heard of, and I'm going to try it out. You need like a graphics tablet or a special like claw in the air.
Yes.
To use this thing. They're actually bringing out a version on iPad later this year, so I'm waiting for that, and I'm going to start having a go
From
with that.
what I've heard is if you artistically inclined and are like a confident painter, drawer, sketcher, and like draw your ideas, you'll enjoy ZBrush.
Yep.
Or ZBrush if you're from the US
I do
and
have a
Canada.
lot,
And Blender are slightly more mathematical. Like the processes involved are a little bit more like formulaic. Like there's like process.
Draw a circle, raise circle by X degrees, draw another. Do you mean that sort of?
Yeah, as opposed to just being like la 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 la.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've the only one I've touched and very basically is Mesh Mixer.
Yes,
and that is very much that. Or Google SketchUp is a good one if anyone's heard of that. It's not Google anymore though, is it? It's somebody else. It used to be Google. It was brilliant because it was free then.
Oh.
But thanks, Tom. And what was the second part of Tom's question?
Best budget printers and curing station.
Can I say I've got a video on that for
if you're
all
prepared
of these.
to drop a mark, sure.
It's fine. The problem is, you don't want me to lie to people, but I do have a video on that. The best budget, I would stick with something like an Elegoo Mars.
Elegoo Mars.
Yeah, I do. So I've got a boring video that walks you through. If you've got £100, get this. If you got, so there's a cheaper one which is the G-Tech Alcade. It's a $99 printer, but for another, like, I think it's $30, you can get a Mars 3 or a Mars 3 Pro, which is significantly better in terms of build quality as a printer from a more well-known, reliable brand like Elegoo. And you get things like a screen protector, a carbon filter that's built into it to get rid of some smells, and that's about $130-ish.
Curing stations?
Curing stations, just get the cheapest one you can get.
That doesn't really matter.
How many people keep saying you should do more curing station reviews? And I'm like, one, they're boring because they all do the same thing.
They're basically microwaves.
They are microwaves with LED lights in. Now, my first one was an empty paint tin with a UV LED strip in it, and one of those solar spinny things.
Yes,
and that worked.
It worked,
and that cost me less than £10.
Yeah, I think Steve actually has. Before he got his curing station, he had a really useful box.
Right,
he like sprayed the outside, so it was, and then just stuck LED things inside. Was it Steve or someone else? Anyway,
but you do that for like if you're de-yellowing plastic.
It's a cheap option. Yeah,
that it works.
I have a follow-up for the best budget printer idea as well.
Oh, okay.
Just a point in that generally, if you're new to things, you will find most advice and like a lot of user-based information and useful advice on products that a lot of people own. So rather than
Yes, you will.
rather than going for, you'll be able to find, if you go for something like an Elegoo Mars, there are thousands of people who will be looking for the same information you are looking for. So there'll be so much information on like certain types of resin working in certain things. You'll find someone who is in Germany who has this kind of humidity and temperature in their room who is trying to use this resin with a Mars. You'll find that person and you can just copy their settings, which is
100% that you cannot disvalue how useful the community is. Like either join a Reddit group for your printer or brand, join a Facebook group, and you'll have no end of support there.
Yes.
But yeah, definitely that.
UBD, one can only imagine what that stands for.
UBD.
Asks, how easy is it to design your own stuff? And what types of things would be recommended to make/avoid?
It's incredibly hard, Guy. Incredibly hard.
To make your own stuff?
Yes. In what way? Like models? Sculpting?
I assume we're back to sort of sculpting. I feel like it's a creative endeavor, isn't it? So it's like learning a new skill in exactly the same way as if you've never ever drawn with charcoal before. You can do it and you can start doing it straight away, but your results aren't necessarily going to be good. It's the same as trying to use a 3D modeling program.
There are some people out there who are naturals who are
sure.
just, I am so jealous of.
Yeah. Or they have affinities with similar programs and similar things, and it kind of feels a bit like they're a bit more at home.
Yeah.
But just jump in. Like, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
You don't have fun. Stop doing it. Best case scenario, you love it and you want to spend more time on it and you end up being pretty good at it. Win-win,
He's got the better answer. This is why it should be you asking you these questions.
Right. Well, you finished the first page. Actually, the second page is much shorter.
Woohoo!
So question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 left.
Ooh.
Tamsin and Mark. Hello. They ask, how much faff is it? Do you need to mess with settings just when you start out or every time you print? How important is it to keep everything at a consistent temperature? How often do parts of the printer break or need replacing? And what else do you need on top of the printer? Let's go bit by bit.
Brilliant. Okay.
How much faff is it? I think.
Can we come back to that?
Yes, we'll answer that. We'll answer this in a roundabout way through the other questions.
Yeah. So you need to set it up for your printer, your environment, so temperature, your chosen layer height, which is to taste, and the resin you've chosen.
Yes.
So if you get a bundle with the printer, it's normally that brand's thingy. You might get some basic settings, but that's not going to necessarily work in your printing environment, which may be hotter, colder, more humid. The humidity doesn't matter as much, but still. But you only need to do that once. Unless one of those variables changes, you need to do it again. So if the temperature goes up, you might want to drop your exposure time down. If it goes down, you might want to increase it.
Yeah, but there's like machine maintenance as well, like leveling it.
There is,
if it goes off.
A lot of modern printers stay leveled, but some of them, like we said earlier, with the Elegoos, do unlevel themselves. But you can pretty much now set them up and they just go and you're happy with it. When you have a problem, again, join a community and ask, say, this has gone wrong. And you might need to tweak it occasionally, but most people can just print and print.
How important is it to keep everything at a consistent temperature?
Consistent temperature is the most important. It's not about keeping it hot, keeping it cold. You can still print it cold, but you'll be overexposing a bit more, so you'll lose a little bit of detail, but you can still print up to and around about 5 degrees Celsius.
Is that because like the resin viscosity changes at different temperatures?
Gotcha. So, and it's just its reactiveness to the UV. Like any chemical reaction, heat is a catalyst. When you start to remove that, you get different results.
Okay. How often do parts of the printer break and or need replacing?
Any mechanical object can break, so any mechanical part can break at any time. That's just luck. You can do it through the post. The most common one is the LCD screen, which they're actually a consumable part rated for 2,000 hours of printing, and that's on time. So it's not like this print took me 10 hours. Actually, you're only printing for maybe 5 to 7% of that full sequence because the rest of the time it's lifting and lowering.
Down, right.
So yeah, 2,000 hours of screen on time, which is incredibly
good
long.
Amount of printing.
Oh, it's a good amount of printing.
You've gone through thousands of pounds of resin to get to that point.
90% of people would replace their printer before the screen.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. What else do you need on top of the printer?
Depending on your resin, so if you've got water washable, then nothing really. If you've got a different resin, then you need to use things like isopropyl or odorless methylated spirits to clean it. So you need that. That's expensive. You definitely need gloves, lots of gloves. You get 3 or 4 sets with your printer. That'll last you 2 prints, maybe 1. I'd definitely get a cleaning mat. I'd definitely get a pickle jar, a large pickle jar for cleaning, and that's enough. But then from there, you can go on to everything else after that. It's really just about making your life easier. So you start with these basics, and everyone does start with the basics unless you've got the money to go elsewhere, and then just build from there with a proper dedicated wash and cure station, areas to work in it, and that sort of thing. So it's a lot.
So at the end of that quite large list, I'm talking about how
Should we come back to
how much
the
faff is
faff?
it? Yes.
That's quite faffy,
It's
isn't it?
a lot.
How have you found it? Like, this is one thing I wanted to leave at the end of the interview, but this is the bit where I'm going to flip it upside down. So obviously
midway through.
I love 3D printing. It's become not so much a second hobby, but it enables me to paint more and different things.
Sure.
People talk about like, oh, it versus Warhammer, but to me, I don't even consider them the same thing anymore. I've become now distracted by other models rather than, oh, I want to get Warhammer cheap. I'm so deep into that. You, as somebody who's tried it before, who was like, nah, it's not for me, and if I'm right, you set fire to the printer, and it was was that a different channel?
I gave
just
it away.
exploded it. Right, okay. So what's your thoughts now that you've been through an easier process on the faff of 3D printing in a household?
There are like several factors to consider. I'm not 100% sure of the like long-term health consequences of like being around resin and inflated spirit kind of in open containers while you're doing stuff. We stopped printing and stopped cleaning and stopped everything about 4 hours ago, and the air quality meter is still maxed out. There's risks. I mean, I'm not going to absolutely change what I do based around 3D printing. It's a nice tool to have, but it's a tool in your hobby arsenal, and I would still prefer, I think, to buy a production item that is great and I know how to deal with already because I've been in the hobby for 30 years.
Yep.
Than kind of mess around with the thing that I'm clearly still not a brilliant at and potentially like poison myself. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to keep it and I'm going to still use it from time to time, but I'm not going to just start using 3D
It's not going to replace
constantly.
anything. Yeah, you're not going to be like, Guy is now a converted, this is a 3D
Absolutely
printing
not.
channel. No.
But it's useful to have a tool in the same way that I have an airbrush, but I rarely use it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly that.
And the airbrush has health consequences as well, because you're particulating or atomizing paint into the air, and that you are going to breathe it, whether or not you wear a mask or not.
There is that. And this is the decision people need to make for themselves, I think. And you're right, and I'm glad you brought that up, because it's something I've avoided giving people the answer.
Yes.
Because I don't know the answer, as we talked about earlier. But it is like, these are things where people need to watch this and go, right, okay, I'm not playing. This is not a toy.
Yes.
This is not something to play with.
Very much not.
It's not an over, oh my God, I've got to be scared of this, because the approach to actually achieve what you want to achieve is easier than most people now realize. It is actually a lot more plug and play. But yeah, the
ease of use is certainly much easier now than it was when I tried for the first time. But say, for example, if I was doing this in a professional environment, if I was doing this like in a factory, you know, like for my job, manufacturing stuff,
you'd want to be trained.
I would want a lot of training on how to use this, and like supervisors making sure I wasn't messing up and like doing things that will potentially kill me further down the line.
Yeah.
And you just don't get that. Like, who's providing that? You with YouTube videos?
No,
that's what I mean.
Exactly.
That's what I mean. Like,
no, you're not putting that on me.
You know, anybody can buy these things and start using them without a care in the world. You know, it's that kind of joke. And there's some pretty serious things involved.
For people out there looking to do this, like we talked about flats earlier, we're saying this with the knowledge that we don't know. We don't know if this could be hurting people, pets, kids, or anything.
It might be nothing.
It might be nothing. We don't know. But what neither of us want to do is harm anybody at any point in their life through advice, or I don't want to harm anyone through advice we're giving out. So for safety, if you are doing it in your house, put it in the places that you live, put it in a sealed unit, and then vent it outside from that unit.
Yeah.
Or put it in your garage, put it in your shed, put it somewhere where that's not a livable place, ideally.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's it.
Nice.
What are you going to give me on that one?
10. I gave you a 10 already as you were talking.
Oh, brilliant.
Kid Survivalist asks, on a resin printer, if you're printing things like tank barrels or sticky out bits like spears or pikes, is it best to use supports or make the cure time longer?
So if you increase the cure time, it hardens the material a bit more. Let's say this is our tank. So
realistic.
Here's our barrel. Yeah,
nice.
That's right. So this would be your, is it turret?
Yes.
Yep. So your turret sticks off. So what you would want to do, I'm going to hold that like that. There's my plate. And it's printing like this, and it's doing that. So if that's not supported, every time you lift, that's going to pull.
Okay.
No matter how cured it is, it's going to be a problem. So you definitely want to support it more than increasing the exposure time. Increasing the exposure time doesn't necessarily lead to better models. It will overcure and bloat models with many of its details. So good supports is the key.
Okay, that's a 10 out of 10 answer. Nice and quick. Didn't
nice.
reference a video. Well done. Tom A says, for people that don't want their own 3D printers but want to own cool models that small creators design, what are the best places they could send files to be printed?
I think if you are a small creator, the one I'd recommend, and this is a plug for someone else, is My Mini Factory. If you are a creator, get your model, and you're doing minis, get your models on My Mini Factory. Earn some money from them, unless you want to keep them to yourself. But they also offer printing services. You suggested some place, because I couldn't think of any, because I print myself.
I've seen people advertising it on Fiverr.
Yeah.
Just advertising print service. They're not necessarily the cheapest because they have to go through quite a process to get your model to you. And you might only want one of a thing. And, if they were to make loads, their kind of investment of time to what they're charging would be better for them. So whatever. But if you want like one particular thing or a couple of little things, Fiverr is actually a pretty good bet.
Yeah. Independence, basically. Any independence.
It's not a company. You're essentially just like reaching out to someone like you. It was like, I'll print that for you and put it in a box and send it to you for, however much money. Cool. I'll give you 7 for that. I mean, it's okay. Could it be better?
5. Can we have 5 each?
No.
No?
Ralph Hodge.
It's my channel.
Ralph Hodge asks, I've heard time and time again that 3D printing becomes a hobby of its own. Which option, resin or filament, is better choice for someone who doesn't want 3D printing to steal too much time from their mini painting / playing time?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's it. Depends what you want to print is going to be the answer on that. Yes, 3D printing very much becomes a hobby on its own. Would you believe that I actually started my channel as a Warhammer channel? If you go back, there's me talking about Warhammer things, miniatures, painting. It's nothing to do with that. No, genuinely isn't. But no, so if you go back, there's me talking about magazines for Warhammer, the Battle Honours report, doing painting guides, things like that. I kind of fell into 3D printing. It was quite weird. And then, yes, that role has now taken over my hobby life. I would very much like to be spending more time sat painting my Warhammer miniatures than I spend covering 3D printers. But I also love 3D printers, and I love the community that I've built that want to know and understand what these devices are, because I'm fed up with people like 4K is better than 8K and all that stuff. Again, that's something my audience will completely understand and relate to. But yes, it's a massive hobby. In regard to how much easier it is, right, here's the breakdown. FDM printing is safer, easier, and generally prints out of the box if you're using basic materials like PLA. But you're not going to get detailed models. That's more for practical prints, and you will see layer lines quite extremely.
A lot of people who do like basically just terrain use FTM. Because it's kind of, it does the job, and it does the job. Great for terrain. Yeah,
it's fine. If you are happy with the quality level of something where you will clearly see layer lines, it's fine. If you want visual props on the surface, it's great. You can even get color prints now in FDM, which is really cool. I did some terrain in color for Titanicus scale and War Machine and stuff like that. Resin printing will give you a lot more detail in miniatures. That's a lot easier to get into. Once you've got your settings dialed in, it's dead easy. But it's messy. It's very messy, and as we discussed, it's a faff. So it's, what do you want? Do you want detailed minis and a faff, or do you want easy, works out of the box, but not as detailed?
I think a lot of what it might boil down to with a lot of these questions as well, if people have pets and kids in their house, as I do, I think a lot of people are going to want to prefer FDM over
definitely
resin, because the poisoning factor isn't there.
Not so much. I mean, I think it does still give off some VOCs.
Sure, but
but minimal.
Not necessarily
if you're printing PLA, not that. No.
The funny thing though, just to clarify, maybe you've already seen my video on this and you know what I'm going to say next, but the resin didn't really kick out much VOCs.
No,
the air quality didn't really change at all when we were prepping the resin, when it was printing, doing anything like that. The thing that made it go absolutely nuts was putting the methylated spirit in The ultrasonic cleaner.
Yeah, it's bad stuff.
Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought?
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of people are like, hang on, the stuff that's made for cleaning is bad for you.
Yes.
Yeah, don't drink bleach, kids.
It's not supposed to clean your lungs. Okay, I'll give you an 8 for that. Well done. Trajan Valoris asks, I assume resin printing is better for fine detail, assuming high quality printer, but what's capable on a standard FDM? We kind of just asked that, but what's the best you've seen an FDM produce?
So I have actually, and this is not dialed in, I did actually do not a review, but like an explorational, is that a word? Exploratory. I did an exploratory video recently with the Bamboo X1, which is considered by many to be like the top FDM printer at the moment for accessibility and various reasons, and I swapped that down to a 0.2mm nozzle and printed miniatures on it. Now it's difficult with miniatures because the supports are totally different, but a guy called Duncan Shadow actually sculpted some supportless miniatures, like built in such a way where there's like no 45-degree overhangs, and they look gorgeous. Absolutely. They're not resin quality, but they're close. But I haven't dialed that in. I actually refer back to a guy called we talked about him earlier, Danny, the miniature painting DM, I think he went by, who I miss. Like his content was incredible, and I loved his stuff. And he actually did a lot more like dialing it down. And people have took these nozzles and dialed it down really good. So I'll be doing more content on that in the future. But check that out. Like I'll put, in fact, whilst we're talking about this, I'll put some examples up on screen.
It's like souping up a car, right? It's like you can do all of these tiny tweaks to it to get marginally, incrementally finer detail.
Exactly that. But personally, for me, I prefer to just buy the fast car.
Yeah, but there's nothing right now within the realms of consumer purchases that is like exceptional FDM print quality.
Not out the box.
Out the box is what I'm saying.
Not comparable to miniatures.
But you can get close.
You can get pretty close with some caveats.
Okay.
So, but again, I'll throw that up on screen. Everyone will be able to see what I've been able to achieve now.
It's a solid 7, well done.
Hey,
okay,
a solid 7.
Final.
It's a crap mark, but it's clearly crap.
It's solid in the good zone. Simon Thelning. I don't have the space for a printer myself, so I rely on others to print for me. A number of the finer, more spindly resin models I've gotten are extremely brittle and prone to shattering. I'd like to hear about the different, more flexible resins and whether they come with a trade-off in print quality or are they more expensive?
Right, well, in terms of like flexible resins, if he's got people printing miniatures for him, then I kind of... No, I'm not.
You're going to get your resin there again. Yeah.
But no, he's completely right. And a lot of people go for a couple of different approaches with resins now. People will go for cheaper resins, like if anything says standard resin on it, it normally means cheap, brittle, and hard. What's really amusing, I find so many people who watch my videos will be like talking about the qualities of like 8K versus 4K and 12K and 14K. And then you look at the common resins that people use and they are the cheap ones, and you won't render that detail anyway, even with softer resins. General rule of thumb, if something is higher detail because it's got more chalkiness in it, like I don't know how to make resins, I literally get people to make it for me and I say, I don't like that, make it better. Your harder resins, your more brittle resin, are your more brittle resins, so they're the more higher detailed one because they've got just more chalky pigmentiness in them. And then your softer, more flexible resins are generally your less detailed one. What people tend to do, like I said before, is two approaches. Find a resin that they're just happy with, that's got that balance for them. Like I say, I've released one specifically for the miniatures crowd that I think's the right balance. But then there's people who will take like a really high detail resin, like Soraya Tech Fast or Frozen 8K resin, which are two really high detail resins. Elegoo Space Grey is another one up there at that top tier for detail, and mix in a bit of Soraya Tech Tenacious, which is very bendy and flexible, and shake that round. And doing that will allow you to do it to your personal taste.
Okay.
But obviously, as Simon says, he's getting other people to print for him, then he's going to have to then talk them into buying the different resins for him.
Send them the link to this video in this question.
There you go. Then they can buy Wargamer.
I'm going to add a question.
Go on then.
From me to you. In terms of percentages of likelihood, say like 1% is just not going to happen. 100% is for show. Faux show. What is the likelihood that within 10 years, Games Workshop will release their own model of 3D printer with their own blend of resin and start selling out of production minis Hattie's shaking, doing big head shakes from behind the camera.
What do I think? Percentage chance? Higher than 0, less than 1%.
Okay.
And don't forget, we are talking about a company. I'll have to get a picture up on screen. We're talking about a company that released a plastic tube and an airbrush and cans of spray air. So it's not. So the fact that existed proves that it's not impossible. I don't think that that's their approach. I don't think that'll ever be their approach. They would be better off, in my opinion, as a company, taking the Apple approach to music and creating their own licensable storefront where people can buy community designed STLs
that burn after use.
It's as possible as like DRM. Is it DRM music? Music with DRM. Yeah, it's as possible as that.
And nobody ever pirated anything after that became a thing.
Yeah, exactly. So you cannot get music anymore now that isn't protected. So yeah, no, it's not a thing. But again, it's a community thing, isn't it? Like it's a topic I wanted to slightly approach anyway, because I don't want to do the 3D printing versus Games Workshop directly, because 3D printed models, a lot of the time, no offense to the creators, when you look at them on the table, do kind of look like the knockoff versions of the official ones. There's some great parts out there, and for customization, definitely good. But if you get like gloomy angels, then they will look like a cheaper version of the official thing.
Sure.
We are in a community where people will protect each other. And I think there are people out there who would buy it and potentially share it with friends, but these are community driven, so Games Workshop would control it in this instance, and it'd be for, they wouldn't release models, it'd be like for custom shoulder pads and that sort of thing.
Gotcha, sure.
I would rather see Games Workshop go back to supporting the creators. Like people out there will have an attitude of, I don't mind taking from the corporation.
Yeah, sure.
But if they knew that Darren Latham sculpted it, would they steal from Darren?
It's the problem with dehumanizing corporations, isn't it? There are real people involved, and they're really talented and skilled, and you just don't know their names.
No,
which is a shame.
It is a shame. It's a massive shame. But yeah,
that's a whole different topic for a whole different video.
And we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Shall we say bye-bye? Shake hands.
Should we do that? Say get out my house.
Get out of my house now.
Yeah. I don't know why I keep it on camera. I don't know why I waste of bastard time.